May 1912. We have Ernest to thank for the installation of the lights in the servants' dining room, Lord Grantham declared, as Ernest was brought to the library. Now the work was complete. He has overhauled the generator. And is it true you worked with Professor Rutherford? Lady Sybil sparkled at her brother. That was what Milo always remembered about the young woman. It was as if she had been fed a diet of diamonds. She held onto his trouser leg and tried to keep as still as possible. It is, Lady, nodded graciously, and I helped. Milo just could not keep her words from coming out. She had, and Lord Grantham had not mentioned her. Indeed, me Lucina. And she shrank into her brother's leg at his words. Ernest only ever called Milo by her full name when she was in trouble. I wish you would have it in the Dower House. Cora changed her mind on the bedrooms, when Ernest here showed her that there were no vapors. Indeed, the old lady declared. Milo glanced at her, and was rewarded by a beady-eyed glare. She felt indignant. Ern had spent a lot of time making the house shine with pretty lights. Even she could tell the old lady didn't like them. What was there not to like? Come, tell me, Lord Grantham continued, taking Ernest Ashby's shoulder. What is Rutherford working on now? What did you do at Cambridge? Milo watched them go, straining to hear the conversation. She had become used to it this year. When Ernest had been at university, their rooms, her and her father's, had been across the gardens from where Ernest and other university students, professors and doctors of physics had done their work. She had crept in several times to listen, to watch. Several things, Ernest replied, the subatomic particles inside the nucleus of an atom, for one thing. Well, laughed Lord Grantham, I won't pretend to know any of what you've just said. What was it you spoke of earlier? Electromagnetic induction. Quite so. It is when the generator is. Come with me. A gentle voice was by her ear and Milo turned round, beguiled. She had wanted to follow Ernest and Lord Grantham. She hated being away from him, and the king of the big house, as Milo came to think of Robert Crawley, had stolen her brother away. She knew by now that Ern would be coming back to her, but had no idea when. Perhaps a long time in the future. Perhaps the beautiful lady made of diamonds had plotted with the king to take her away from him. It was all that Milo could do not to scream and pull away from Lady Sybil, but she knew that would bring frowns and tellings off. You do? Milo could hear the king exclaim to Ernest. Manchester? Now, that is coincidence. The sparkling glass of the library window caught her eye, and Milo glanced at the witch princess and then over to it. The sun had come to tell her something. It had come to make her happy with its dazzlings. Marconi, you say? Well, this is incredible. The judge lauded Mr. Marconi for his radiotelegraphy. Those who have been saved through one man, he said. Well, what do you like, me Lucina? The witch princess spoke near Milo's ear, and she froze. What had she done wrong this time? Milo turned sorry eyes to the young woman and made to hang her head. Begging your pardon, Lady Sybil, came Thomas Barrow's voice. Milo glanced to the library door, then jerked her eyes away. Her friend was there, but so was the bear. If she looked away now, he may not see her. She prefers Milo. Milo, Lady Sybil repeated, and smiled when Milo turned her head, finding it in herself to smile back for a second. My deepest thanks to your reference. I can gain another year at Cambridge, gain a doctorate under Rutherford. Lord Grantham turned his eyes to Milo. And this little one? Me Lucina, isn't it? Milo corrected, glancing up at the old king, and then fixed her eyes on a shoulder seam of his evening jacket. Lord Grantham, she added, when she felt something more was needed and bobbed up and down. I am going to be the same as Ernest, a university graduate. Women can't go to university. Lady Mary's words dripped with scorn, though none struck the target, for the tone of her voice meant nothing to Milo. Then I won't be a girl, Milo said, remembering all the people with Ernest at his university lessons. It wore right. There were no women there. I'll be a boy. Laughter came, of many flavors. Mostly it was nervous laughter, but it was drowned out by the laughter from those who thought this was a hilarious joke from a young child, who was clearly in on it. Are you? Lord Grantham humoured, and put a hand to the small of her back. pushing her in the direction of Carson. "Go down to the kitchen, Mrs. Patmore. We'll give you something." "An apple?" Milo asked. "You can have all the apples you like," Lord Grantham confirmed, then turned on his heel to speak to the rest of the guests. The bear said nothing as he escorted Milo from the library to the stairs. She was shaking, and refused to look up. Her eyes drifted to the staircase and the glass at the top of the first floor. The light poured through it, like a torrent of water, and it changed to many colors. Ernest had told her about that. Light gives up its secret when passing through glass, and its secret was that 7 colors were within it, only showing when someone who knew what to do with it got it to pass through it. It happened with water, too, Milo noticed, and she stepped towards the stairs. "This way," Carson instructed, and put a huge paw on her shoulder. Milo screamed, and bolted down the stairs. The bear thundered after her, but she was quicker, and dipped under Daisy's arm, who was carrying a tea tray. "Milo," Daisy called, then turned around and called back, "Mrs. Patmore." "Milo, Milo," Mrs. Patmore exclaimed, shaking her head at the pear flan she was preparing. "On a day like today." "I'll find her," Thomas replied, putting down a cup of tea. "Wouldn't want her to mess up the place. Not today." He found the ribbon that Milo had pulled from her hair on the second step up, and glanced in the direction of the stairs. "It's me, Thomas," he called, as he leaned under it. "Please come out. Mrs. Patmore has apples you can have." "Apples," thought Milo, repeating word for word in her head the voice of Lord Grantham. "You can have all the apples you like." "She's a bratling, and no mistake," O'Brien said, by Thomas's ear. "No, mother. Look at the state of her, running round all over." Milo stuck out her head from under the stairs, and looked at Thomas, giving O'Brien a quick glance. "She's different," Thomas said, as Milo climbed down and took his hand. Her hair was a real mess now, and she stood there, its strands sticking out in all directions. "That's her ladyship's brush," Thomas mock-chided O'Brien. "Yes," O'Brien replied, the mother of Berlin laid back, catching the light. She turned to look down to Milo, not quite a smile on her lips. "You like it?" "She likes everything shiny," Thomas told her. And, without warning, O'Brien took Milo's shoulder and began to pull the bristles through her hair. Milo screamed, and tried to pull away, but O'Brien held her tighter, getting in 3 or 4 smooth, clean drags before "She bit me." The lady's maid was nursing her hand as Milo darted from her. "Thomas, you're needed upstairs," called Carson, as O'Brien went into the kitchen and ran her hand under the tap of cold water. "She bit me," O'Brien repeated, shaking her head towards the stairs. "Daisy." Thomas tried not to roll his eyes when the kitchen maid looked up to him in wide-eyed adoration. "Look for Milo, will you?" and began to reel off her usual hiding places. "Try the generator room, the garage, the solar." "Oh, I couldn't." Daisy shook her head. "Give you a kiss if you find her." Daisy brightened. "Really?" "Yes." Thomas sighed, glancing up the stairs as he was summoned by the stentorian tones of Carson. "And when you find her, keep her in the kitchen and away from O'Brien, and give her an apple." 88,888,888. Milo appeared by herself in the kitchen as it grew dark. She stood in the pantry, calculating her best chance to go in. When no one was about, she told herself, and slip to the table and pretend she has been there all along. Here, a voice near her ear caused Milo to turn around, and when she saw it was Thomas, she followed him instinctively and sat to the table. "I think you need to say sorry to Miss O'Brien," he told her, placing a pair of soup spoons in her hands. The electric light glittered off the convex surfaces of the back. She was upside down and tiny that way, but the other, she was the right way round, but on the concave surface she was dispersed across the whole of the spoons area. "You won't make me have my hair brushed?" Milo asked, without looking away from the spoons, which seemed to capture the light and imprison it on the surface. "I won't, but I can do it for you if you like. I used to do my sister's." "What have you got in there, Thomas?" A voice came behind them both. Milo cringed, though took pains to make sure it didn't show when she realized who it was. "A runaway, Miss O'Brien, Thomas answered, holding out his hand for the brush, and placing the scarlet ribbon Milo had lost earlier on the table next to her. "Oh, that little terror," O'Brien declared, but yielded the brush anyway. "Best leave her, nothing can be done." Milo glanced across and sideways to the woman's hand. It had a big, raised circle on the back of it where she had bitten into it. She was tugging. It hurt. Milo had to stop her. But a third line of thought entered her mind as she waited for the jolts of the hairbrush through her mess of hair. What would another person do, and how could Milo be that person next time? Then she called herself, "Me Lucina," silently, in her own head, hearing her brother's voice chiding her. She deserved it. She should not have bitten the woman. But didn't she know it was hurting her? "Ernest, that is, Mr. Ashby, has told me to take her to him afterwards," Thomas told her, and repeated it when Mrs. Hughes stood in the doorway, hands on hips. "Well, Thomas, you're full of surprises," declared Mrs. Batemore when he braided the red ribbon into their long, thick plait of Milo's hair, tying it in a beautiful bow at the bottom. "Let's see you then," Mrs. Hughes said, but Milo could not take her eyes off Miss O'Brien. Perhaps she should have found the words to say that she was sorry earlier. But then, hadn't Ernest regularly told her to slow down with her words, and think carefully about what she should say? Scraped back the chair, suddenly. "I am sorry I bit you," she said at last. "You little brat," O'Brien replied, folding her arms. "We put dogs down that bite, you know." "Miss O'Brien, that is enough." The bear was behind her and had growled, though not at Milo. "I'll take her." And with that, Carson pushed past Mrs. Hughes. Milo shrieked in terror, but Thomas was in her way, and later she was bitterly sorry for what she did next. When he would not move, and Milo could not dodge past him and out of the reach of Carson, she did the only thing she could. Kicked his shin so hard that Thomas yelled out and drew up his knee to caress the pain. He found her later, tears down her face, in a corner of the generator room. Thomas stood in the doorway, and Milo, seeing him, bent her head into her lap. "You want to be like your brother?" he said, quietly, sitting down next to her. "Girls don't go to university." She turned her head to him, chancing that they were still friends, despite her kicking him. "That's why I want to be a boy. I'm Christopher." "Christopher, eh?" Thomas mused, folding his arms himself. "And where have you heard that name before?" But Milo buried her head. "I am sorry," Milo managed, at length, putting her hand to his leg. "Well, so you should be," he told her. "It is not polite to bite, and to kick." "We nearly fell out as friends." Then Milo turned and her sobs racked against his arm as she cried. "But we are friends," he added. But when this did not stem the flow of brine, Thomas withdrew his arm and put it round her. "Is it the bear?" Milo nodded into his leg. "I have some ethnic for you." Milo pulled herself back up, and saw in his hands the shiny spoons, on whose surface the electric one test lamp threw its packets of light. Ernest relieved Thomas shortly afterwards, a look of relief on his face. Thomas understood it as usual. It passed Milo by. "We have to stay with the generator tonight, Milo," he told her, passing her some bread and meat and a glass of milk. "Eat this. I'll be in the other room, with Thomas." 88,888,888. "She's asleep," Thomas told him as Milo's head hit the pillow of the smaller bed made up in the generator room. "Gave everyone the runaround today after she was made to leave you." And he told Ernest about her being frightened and biting O'Brien, and going missing and kicking him. "Oh, she didn't." Ernest sighed, putting a hand to his head. "Father is unwell. He can just about manage the electrical business. I can't send her back. She's even worse with Mrs. Doyle. At least here I can put her to task, and she will do it, even after seeing it only once. Just once. It's how she learned to read and write. She would sit next to me and copy what I wrote. I would say the words. Milo learned them by being told once. She has never been to school." "You do surprise me," Thomas said, sarcastically, but then fell serious. "She's growing up, Ernest. She won't be a little stripling forever." "Has your father thought about it?" "I don't think so," Ernest said, vaguely, as Thomas interlaced his digits with his. "She needs looking after properly, Thomas told him. An institution? He suggested, but then instantly regretted it. She had poor social skills, that a school might easily correct. And she was as brilliant as Ernest. It would crush her. Does she have to be here with you? Father's ill. He can just about manage the shop, with Mrs. Doyle as housekeeper. It has been very difficult since Mother died. She gets into Mrs. Doyle's way. She gets into everyone's way, Thomas told him, pressing his body close to Ernest's. She even has a daughter, and will Milo play with her? Ernest shook his head. Milo just passes the girl the toys, won't play with her, not a game. It's like she has learned the girl is allowed to have her toys, so she gives them over and goes off and draws, or reads. Then you must see, that innocent mind, and getting older. She'll be a woman one day, Ernest. You do both see that. I will speak to father, Ernest reiterated, as Thomas's lips worked their way down his neck, his breath on his ear. But there was no more time for words, only caresses, touches, feels, sensations that brought them to the edge, before they dared one another to take them both over it. How could this be legal? Thomas asked himself later, as he closed his eyes next to his lover. To have closeness to one human being in all the world? It was not foul, it was beautiful. So beautiful. And Thomas Barrow realized, not for the first time, that he loved Ernest John Ashby better than anyone else in the world.